Welcome to another episode of Soul Sentred, the podcast. I'm your host, Jaynie Morris. It's my absolute pleasure, as always, to have your company. Now, if this is your very first time, if you've stumbled across Soul Sentred, the podcast, well, an extra special welcome to you. And before we get into today's episode, I do want to do a huge shout out to all of you who listen to us now on a regular basis. We're getting great feedback. I really appreciate your comments as well. And also your suggestions for guests for us to actually sit down, have a good chat, and bring some amazing stories and inspiration, motivation, whatever they can bring for you to you. Now, you might be listening to us today whilst you're out having a walk. You might be listening whilst you're doing something at home. Or at work, or if you are at work, make sure that your boss doesn't know you're listening to us, right? But wherever you are right now, I'd love you to sit back, relax, and enjoy what Soul Sentred, the podcast, is all about. Good health, well-being, fitness, longevity, and a little bit of biohacking in the mix of all of that. Now, today's episode is a special one that our researchers have been looking at a lot of different topics and a lot of different speakers around the world, as you know. I do that as well, and I came across this incredible podcast that comes out of the US. Now, it's called Imposter Talks. The girls, ladies, I should say, will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Imposter Talks, and I came across it when I was on a treadmill. Listening to this, I was specifically searching for one person, and this podcast came up. And I listened to it, and it struck me that what they were talking about, what they focus on, the imposter syndrome, is not something new. And in many cases, for most of us, we don't realize that it chips away at us on maybe regular basis or every now and again throughout our lives. And we don't know it's there. We don't know how to deal with it because it can be used positively as well as negatively. And that's what these ladies on their podcast, Imposter Talks, gave the message for me. So please help me welcome all the way from the USA, Hannah Bloking and Allison Macalik. Welcome to Soul Sentred, the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having us. We're so excited.
Yes, that was so nice just listening to you. Your voice is so calming. I loved it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Now, as I said, I listened to your podcast. In fact, I've listened to many of them now. And look, the content is great. But before we get into that, I'd love for both of you just to let our audience know today's podcast, our chat, just the three of us. What would you like our audience to take away? What's the message that you would like them to pick up on? Hannah?
I think one of the things that Allison and I have really started to realize about imposter syndrome from having, I don't know, maybe close to 1,000 conversations with people from all different backgrounds, all different stages of career, all different gender identities, is that imposter syndrome impacts everybody. But imposter syndrome also impacts everybody differently. And so what we've learned through all these conversations is that for all the different ways that people feel it, the important thing is to be able to address it and figure out what the right strategy is. And that's what we're really excited about and passionate about.
Well said, Hannah. That was beautiful. Another thing too, we like to keep in mind, we do a lot of workshops. They're called Fight Your Imposter workshops. And Hannah and I are just very vulnerable and authentic by nature. That's just who we are. And we've learned that that can actually really help combat your own imposter. So we're going to be bringing vulnerability and authenticity this entire podcast to make sure everyone else knows that it's okay to lead with that.
Yes, get ready, everybody.
Well, I love that because as our listeners, as our audience around the world already know, I just free flow as a host. So we're always transparent. We're always authentic. So yeah, let's see how this episode rolls then. Now, what I would like is just to roll it back a little bit and give our audience a little personal insight into the two of you. Now, your business is known as 4 Under 3. Can you tell our audience a little bit about each of you individually, your lives, your career, where you're based and things like that? But most importantly, what is 4 Under 3 and how did that come about?
I love the way it came about. And I think that's probably the first question we usually get from anybody that we talk to about our company. And especially because we both, during our day jobs, work in technology, everybody assumes that it's because we're some sort of mathematical geniuses, which maybe we are, but that it has nothing to do with our name. So we actually came up with this business idea because at the time where we decided to make our partnership official and create a company to start to really bring all the power of what we had been doing kind of as grassroots efforts together, we happened to both be 8 months pregnant with our second children. Both of our kids, all of our kids are the exact same ages. So we were collectively incorporating ourselves, but also about to have 4 children under the age of 3 when we started 4 Under 3. And that's the story.
It actually sounds kind of insane looking back, but at the time we were both so passionate about this that we were like, yeah, might as well do it. We're going to be on mat leave for a while. Let's go. And so it just kind of, we kicked it off. I remember doing the branding and all of that, and we were both big and pregnant.
Yeah. Well, it was also during COVID. And so
Yep.
in the US, we were under lockdown. So nobody could tell that we were so pregnant when we were doing these workshops virtually at the time. So yeah, it worked out.
I love it. Now, thank you for that. Now let's dive into Imposter Talks and the content that you bring and the reasons that you do it. And in particular, when you first started out, did you realize that you would get the feedback that you have? Because as you mentioned, Allison, you know, the two of you now have a really powerful and dynamic workshop that you also present for this. Has that all come about because the feedback that you've got is that it's resonating with people? Imposter Talks is resonating with people.
So that is actually funny. So we realized, so Hannah has been at AWS at the time. I was at Salesforce, and by ourselves, we were having these conversations around imposter syndrome. And then Hannah and I have worked together since 2015 at a company in the US called Sprinkler, and they're global now, I think.
Yeah, they are.
And yeah, and we just always stayed in touch, and we were always friends. And we realized, okay, we're both kind of doing this. Let's bring this together. So we actually started with the workshop, which we've learned a lot of people actually start with the podcast and then it expands into a workshop, other offerings. We just went right out the gate with our workshop because we knew it was powerful and we knew it was changing people's lives. And so out of the workshop, we thought, oh my gosh, we're having these conversations all the time. The next natural step was a podcast. And we called it Imposter Talks because a woman at Salesforce at the time had a podcast called Boss Talks, and I loved it. And I was like, Hannah, let's talk about imposter syndrome. And no one was talking about it outside of our workshops. And one thing we say in the workshops pretty frequently is this Google search for imposter syndrome has increased 550% since 2016. So we knew people were looking for it, people were Googling it, people were needing help. And we thought, we know about it. Let's go ahead and do it. And so that's how it started. We kind of did things backwards.
Interesting. So on that, thanks for the clarification. I did think it was around the other way as well. So on that, so the two of you creating that workshop, what was it, or what have you both experienced individually in your own lives as far as imposter syndrome is concerned? Have you experienced it? Do you still experience it?
Oh, yes, and yes. And, you know, both Allison and I work in tech, and we also work in technical roles. So the majority of our careers we've spent primarily in these male-dominated teams. We've often been the youngest person in our teams. And so I would say like 15, 20 years ago when we were starting out in these roles, like there was nobody talking about imposter syndrome. Certainly, older men weren't going to talk to us about imposter syndrome. So we kind of like, especially for the first 10 years of our career, we're kind of silently feeling this way and feeling like every accomplishment that we were getting, every promotion that we were getting, every opportunity that one of our colleagues wasn't getting, it was somehow like we had tricked them, and we couldn't really just recognize that it was due to our own success and our own talents and skills. And imposter syndrome is becoming more and more common. Like people have heard of it, they sort of know what it is. But I think that one of the really interesting things that we've observed is as we started out on our venture of 4 Under 3, because we were women and we knew other women experienced it, we were initially really just talking with other women. So we were talking to women's groups at tech companies where women were coming together to share experiences and talk about how to thrive in male-dominated environments. But then very quickly, what happened was we were setting up these workshops, and like men were coming and knocking on the door of these groups and being like, hey, this is a topic I really want to learn about. Like, can I come? And so now we've learned so much and being able to talk to all these different people. So I would say like what we always talk about when we introduce the workshop and why we're so passionate about it is the first thing that we flash up in our workshop are pictures of us when we were really awkward 12, 13-year-olds. And for me, I know that if I'm being given a new opportunity at work, even today, like Allison and I both have accelerated in our careers, we've been promoted, we lead teams. If I get like a new opportunity, I immediately feel like an awkward 12-year-old. And I'm immediately taken back to this moment where I have like braces and like acne and like don't know how to do my hair. And I feel like this big. So yeah, I still definitely feel it, but I definitely have also observed that having so many conversations with people that are really well respected in the industry, people that are in executive roles of these companies, like having conversations has made me feel really confident because I know that I'm not alone in feeling this way now. Allison, how about you?
I just think about it like today, like literally today. So it's 9 o'clock here in Dallas, Texas. And so I've always had a long business day. And I presented to the company today about AI. And we were talking about, I went to a conference in New York, and actually Hannah and I did a workshop when we were there, and it was amazing. It was talking about how AI is reframing the way people think, and people are scared of it, but it's about reframing your mind and having, these things that AI can work with you versus against you and different things. And Hannah has a lot of experience with AI. I don't. I feel like I'm pretty far behind, and we're trying to catch up. And at first I was like, why am I the one leading these conversations? Why am I? Today, I teach classes on imposter syndrome, and I was having these conversations with myself this morning. Why is it me? I'm not qualified enough. I'm not I don't know why I need to be informing the entire company of AI. And then I went back to some of our principles that we teach in our workshop, and I kind of thought, okay, why not me? Like, I'm passionate about it. I want to learn. I'll be vulnerable. I'll be authentic. I'll connect with these people no matter what. And I kind of brought that spirit to this AI conversation. And afterwards, I was hearing from people saying, oh, thank God, you made it sound simple. I had no idea. And I was like, that's right. But to your point earlier, it's not just something that, oh, I have this and I'm cured. Oh, here I am. I'm cured. Dee, 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 dee. It's like, this is an ongoing thing that will affect you. There are societal things that are happening to you. It's this constant reframe, and just what we've learned is everyone experiences it and it's okay. And then acknowledging it. Another thing too that Hannah likes to talk about in our workshop is giving your imposter a name. And so my imposter's name is Todd. And so even this morning I was like, zip it, Todd, I got this. So, but to your original question, it still affects us every single day in our careers, in life, as moms, as women in the world. And it's something that is just ongoing.
When our audience are listening to this, I can sort of hear, as both of you are talking, the questions coming up from our audience. Things like, and you've both explained beautifully there, but imposter syndrome. A lot of people go because it's a term that is used a lot, right? And so there's an element of expectation that people understand and know what imposter syndrome means. If somebody says, oh, I've got imposter syndrome, and the two of you just gave some great examples, right? But through the podcast that you've been doing, and leading with questions about what is your guest's interpretation of imposter syndrome, have you found that there's different layers or different styles or different types of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Allison loves to talk about is that imposter syndrome can manifest itself in different ways. And so one of the things that she does is in our workshop is she goes through and tries to kind of define a few different examples, because when we're talking to people, all of a sudden people start to light up because that's the term, that's kind of the style of imposter syndrome that they pick up on. So like perfectionist, superwoman, prodigy, all these different ways that people may self-identify, but they don't really know, like, is this my imposter syndrome talking to me? We've also interestingly had some very different types of conversations with people. Like, for example, we're working with a woman who's a minority, and she was talking about how she doesn't even believe in the term imposter syndrome. And that really got us thinking. And because we were like, wow, that's like a really interesting perspective. Can you tell us about it? And she was like, well, because like, I don't think that when I feel like self-doubt, it's because of something inside of me. There are like societal reasons that I feel this way. Like, it's like I'm working against a system that's working against me. And as we've explored that idea more and more, we have found that like minorities, like people in minorities definitely feel that way, and that's great to understand. And that's why imposter syndrome now is moving towards more of this idea of imposter phenomenon, actually, because that way it's not like a syndrome. It's not like something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
But it's just something that can happen to you. Yeah. So it's really interesting, and it's very just dependent upon the person and their interpretation, and maybe even where they are on their journey with it. So
Yeah, and that's a good point, because like as you said earlier, Allison, it's not something that you can go, oh, I'm cured. I know I've got imposter syndrome. I've done this work and what have you, and I'm cured, because it's not a condition, like a specific health condition, is it? Yeah.
Right. And it's not like you're sick, or it's not like a mental issue. It affects everyone very differently. And it really just is a feeling that you've tricked someone, or you've pulled the wool over on someone, or you just think they're going to find me out. And it's this universal feeling that either, it's happening, that you're feeling it, or it's happening, to you, like Hannah was saying about imposter phenomenon.
Yeah.
And people are not giving credit for their work, or people are being undercut for their work. So no matter what's happening throughout the day, it can pop up in different ways in one 24-hour period.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's interesting. One of the podcasts that I listened that you did, and it was with a gentleman who I believe works in your organisation as well, and he was the general manager of some particular. I can't remember his first name. I do apologise, but I was listening to it.
Was this Jack from
Yes.
Pre-Sales Collective?
Yes, Jack. And something that he said, and as you mentioned before, Hannah, now you've got guys coming in and going, hey, I've heard about this. Yeah, I want to be a part of the workshop. And I'm sure there's an increase of male audience listening to your podcast as well. But when I was listening to that podcast with Jack, and he talked about an example of one thing where he was promoted. I'm sort of going around in circles trying to make this short where it was, but he was promoted or something, and he felt that's right. He mentioned that he's got great family genes, so he looks really young, and he had been promoted, and he felt, and people were looking at him initially, or perhaps potentially treating him as he didn't actually have a right to have that promotion, or he shouldn't be in that area because he was so young, but yet he was like 40 or whatever. And that took me back to, for my personal example, back when I was in my late 30s, so around about your ages. And I was offered a position to actually be the CEO of a Australian health company. And I was selected, I was approached, it was a headhunt job. I'd never thought about it, I hadn't applied for it. But the headhunter came to me and offered me the role. And I looked at it, and the first thing I thought of was, I can do this. This is great. Yeah, of course, I've got all the skills. I know what to do. Blah, blah. And I accepted the role. And within 3 weeks of joining that company and being in that role, most of the other team members were over the age of 40. And listening to listening to what Jack said, the light bulb moment for me now, listening to that podcast, was now I know why it was so challenging and difficult, and why I, after a year and a half, actually resigned, because I didn't feel worthy of being in that role because of that. And it was imposter syndrome. I didn't know it was imposter syndrome. So,
yeah,
that's the reason I'm sharing that with you, is that with our audience, I'm sure that there are a lot of people in that situation as well that actually don't know that it's imposter syndrome either. Yeah.
Yes.
So talk to me a bit more about the podcast and the guests that you choose to bring on, because there's so many different ones. How do you choose who comes on and the messages that you want to create with those guests?
Well, the most important thing to us is that we're hearing from a diverse set of voices. And we are very fortunate that we have a very diverse network of people to tap into, just because, both Allison and I come from kind of a niche area of the tech industry, which is specifically called pre-sales. So traditionally, like, you would hear titles like sales engineer, solution architect. And, it's really an interesting role, because while it's a highly technical role, what you'll find is that it often has people that really range in backgrounds. So there's definitely people that come from more of like the STEM or computer science background, but like there's a lot of people in those roles that have were English majors in college, they were music majors, they were theater majors, or some other type of fine art. And so it really creates this like diverse group of talent, really talented people that are really smart and have been doing it for a long time, but just this like different types of imposter syndromes that people have felt throughout their career. Because when we're in these roles, you're kind of like in the driver's seat of working directly with like customers. And if you're working in these companies that are selling to enterprise companies, you're talking to like CEOs and CIOs of Fortune 500 companies regularly. And a lot of the people that we know actually started in these roles like very young. So like Allison and I were in our early 20s, I guess, when we first started in these roles. And so you're immediately thrust into kind of this world where you're supposed to be a consultant and guiding people to make really like multi-million-dollar purchasing decisions that have like at that point 25 years of experience, and you have like 2, so it's just kind of like right for an imposter syndrome type of moment. But so I think like we're just really lucky that we have access to a lot of diverse people. And then as we've been leading these workshops and as we've navigated our careers, we've gained a lot of executive relationships. And so it's been really great to kind of leverage those to bring in executives of these companies to these podcasts, because people really like listening to their own executives talk about imposter syndrome, because it's certainly not a conversation that you have. And when you're in these companies, you're like, you put your executives up on a pedestal almost. So like, it's really good to have them come in and help break down that imposter feeling for people. And Allison, I know we're probably thinking about the same person particularly.
Yeah, the best. They're so fun. I think one thing that I love more than anything is when you have your executives at your own company and you think they are just untouchable, and you're just like, oh my goodness, because they're put on pedestals at the company. And then you get to know them and they're just real people, and they're just funny, and they're human, and they have imposter syndrome. It kind of helps you view the world a little bit different and kind of level the playing field. So we love to talk to all different levels, because there's a humanity in everyone. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or we talk to a magician. We talked to a magician because he chose to opt out of the tech world and the corporate world, and he has imposter. It was fascinating. So we like to talk to all different types of people, because it crosses barriers. It crosses all sorts of different, across the world. And sometimes we had a woman who I used to work with at a ad agency early on in my career. And she is a fundraiser and has this really important job. And she came on and said, before we started recording, I just want to talk about all the imposter syndrome of being a mom. And Hannah and I said, sounds great. Let's dive in, sweetheart. And we did. And we talked about it being a working mom and what that means and how that affects you and how it feels. So if it's an executive that everyone is going to want to connect with and learn that they're a human, if it's a magician, if it's we've talked to the gambit. And so I think now when we ask people to come on, we love to hear just a different perspective on imposter syndrome. We love to hear, maybe a different background. Some folks come to us who have been teachers and now they're in tech and how they can use that as a superpower. And it just makes for a very interesting human conversation. And that's what I think are our best episodes, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, our audience, I know myself and our audience would love to hear from both of you in regards to some simple tips or things that you've learned that you now share specifically in your workshop as well, that people who are listening right now who know or think that they might have imposter syndrome, what they could implement in their own lives to start switching that up and changing things for them.
I think my favorite is one that directly kind of addresses something we were talking about earlier, and it's just being open to talking about it. So one of the things that I used to really struggle with, maybe being the only woman in my team, but certainly being one of the youngest people in my teams, is I had zero desire to talk to how I was feeling to anybody, because I felt like that would kind of put me in a position of, weakness, honestly. And I wanted to seem more mature and I wanted to seem like I had my shit together. But what I've learned is, like, honestly, as soon as I allowed myself to open up to kind of the people that were more senior to me in my teams, it immediately has shifted the dynamic. And it hasn't been this, like, I thought it would make me look like a victim, but it doesn't at all. It's been great to, like, kind of use that as a tool to really, gain credibility with people on a completely different level. And it was also really eye-opening to me that they felt shocked that I felt that way, like they just were completely shocked. And so that's always good to hear when you're, like, saying, like, hey, I'm feeling really vulnerable about this thing that I've never done before. And they'll be like, I had no idea you do everything. Like, you're such a badass, so it's kind of just be surprised.
Perception is everything.
You can be surprised when you open yourself up to people. So I think that's probably my favorite tip, is being open to talking about it. Be surprised.
Great. Allison?
I think one that people can really hold on to is the naming your imposter. So I think Hannah has said Susan before. I say Todd, just like, Todd, give me a break. It kind of separates you from the feeling and it lets you have more control. That one really resonates with folks. Another one that is so, so, so simple, and we talk about this in the workshop, is it's about checking your language. And I did this yesterday on a call. I literally said, hey, I just want to ask a clarifying question. And I was on mute and I heard myself say it and I was like, what in the world? And then I came off mute and I said, clarifying question. Like, just here is the statement, instead of like, oh, hey, can I ask a question? It's like, of course I can ask a question. Like, check your language. And so if you want to take that a step further, there is a free Google extension that you can get, a Chrome extension, and it connects into your inbox if you have Gmail. And it's called Just Not Sorry. And if you use words that are imposter related or not assertive or coming in kind of like how I was phrasing the question, it'll underline it in red for you, like it's a misspelling word. And it's not.
Oh, wow.
It's just a word to say, like, hey, be mindful, instead of, hey, what do you think? I could get this by Friday. Okay, that's going to be underlined for sure.
Yeah.
Try phrasing it as, I'm going to need this by Friday. Thanks. So it's just little things that you're constantly doing to reframe your mind in terms of fighting your own imposter.
Self-talk is really powerful, isn't it? And that's
affirmations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people that go, oh, yeah, you can say, positive things and go, oh, I'm always positive. And, but sometimes that can be a little bit of the mask of imposter syndrome.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
For that as well. So, yeah, no, and I love naming it Todd, Susan, That's great. I'm going to have to come up with it. In fact, I'll get our audience to send in some names. Can
Yeah, we'd love to hear them. We've heard a lot of them before.
Yeah, exactly. Girls, ladies, sorry, the two of you, building the business. You're working mums. You're both in very high profile, high stressful, high demanding careers that you both have. You've both got two gorgeous kids each as well, and your hubbies and your lives in general and all that sort of thing. How do you balance? Because this workshop's pretty important, and the podcast, marrying in with it equally so. How do you manage all of this as this entrepreneurship that the two of you have got and that you're living?
I think because I'm so passionate about all of these things, it's really forced me to prioritize what I get worked up about and what I don't, quite honestly, because you can throw all of your energy into one area of your life and kind of ignore the other things that make you a very well-rounded person and give you lots of joy. And so it has required just a natural balance because there's not enough time in the day for everything. And I think, like, in general, I'm a much more balanced human because I have 4 under 3 and obviously my family and my career.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. We call this, we don't call it our side hustle, we call it our side passion. And I think if it was something else, like, I don't know, my husband used to detail classic cars. He loved it. But it turned into this side hustle thing, and he's lost his love for it. And so he stopped doing it. And we've never lost our love of it. Like, we've been doing this for years, during the pandemic, during babies, during sickness, like, because we love it. And then every time we do a podcast, every time we do a workshop, I am on a high for like 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we did this in New York, and right after the workshop I went to a conference, and I was telling Hannah, I was like annoyed that the conference wasn't as good as the podcast or as the workshop we just did, because
Yeah.
it's like, this is real work that's impacting people right then, and they're giving you so much feedback, and it's changing people's lives for the better. And so, back to Hannah, back to your point of it's all a balance. Like, this is not easy. We're not trying to make it seem like we got it all figured out. I mean, we don't have as many hours of the day as Beyonce with private nanny, meal planning, and all the amazing things. We used to talk about that in our workshop. But I think that when something really lights you up from the inside, it doesn't feel like it's something like, oh, we got to do this. It's like, we get to do this.
Yeah.
And it really does change your mind. And it's been easy to deprioritize things besides, of course, family. There was an analogy of just make sure which balls are glass that aren't going to drop. And it's like kids has been, I think for me over the years, this has become one that is breakable, and it's very valuable to me, and we're not going to let it drop. So other things, like I missed, some kid had a dress up day today. Whoop, missed it. Sorry, you're fine. You'll have another. It's like those kind of things can show up, but it's just about prioritizing and what's important.
Yeah. Now, what is next for the two of you with 4 under 3? What can we expect in the future?
Oh, we're already working on what's next. So, we're very lucky that we originally had kind of one offering. It was the workshop that we were doing, and we had a lot of success with it. We continue to have a lot of success with it. But I guess as avid learners and people that love to create, Allison and I both are very passionate about storytelling, and we're passionate about creating our own content. So we definitely have something in the works that's kind of like V2.
Ooh.
That's great because we get a lot of repeat customers actually. So people want to bring us back every year, which is great. But it's almost like it's time for the advanced course because people have taken the workshop multiple times.
Yeah, it's really just about iterating. Like, we have a new promo video coming out just for the workshop. My husband and I own a coffee shop here in Oak Cliff in Dallas, and we're going to do an entire women's workshop day. Hannah's going to fly in, and we're planning that for the spring. So it's just kind of like you said.
That's going to be the best.
I know. and we're going to have all sorts of different women coming together. My vision, I know we're working on some things, but is incorporating this into a retreat, and having some really.
Oh, you've been talking about that for years.
I know. And my friend just opened up a retreat center in North Carolina, and I was like, "Oh, you don't say."
Wow.
So it's so fun to just combine these years and years and years of experience and all these people, and just let's all work together.
Yeah.
Let's create something beautiful. And we're both, as you can tell, probably, we like to get things done. We don't just like to talk about them. Like, we're action ladies, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
So more to come. We'll keep you updated.
Well, I was just going to say, make sure that you do. I think it's incredibly exciting, and I love the concept of the retreat as well. Even just a couple of days or longer, because it's not. What I'm feeling is both of you are saying, and you're right. I know that both of you are not just talkers. It's not a talking. You're both action girls, and this is something globally. The retreats and the workshops, this is something globally that is so important, and that there'll be a huge audience right around the world that will want to access these. So Australia has great places for retreats too.
I've never been. Hannah goes a lot. I'd love to go.
We know a lot of places, and we've had some guests on that actually run them as well in Australia and Bali and New Zealand and Thailand. So yeah, I can see that going for both of you. Now, for our audience who are listening right now, what's the best way to? Can you just give us your podcast handles? Of course, all of those notes will be in the show notes for if they're listening or watching this right now. But do you want to just give some plugs out?
Yeah, please. Especially if you are on LinkedIn, follow us at 4under3. And don't forget to look up our podcast on, Allison, you're like the podcast master, Spotify, Apple. You've got them on all the channels.
YouTube. Yep. We're just Imposter Talks on those channels as well. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you can also email us at info@4under3.io. That's our email address.
Excellent. We'll put all of that in the show notes underneath wherever our audience are listening or watching to this right now. Allison and Hannah, thank you so much for joining us here today on Soul Sentred, the podcast. Your Imposter Talks podcast is fantastic, but I'm really looking forward to, I really want to come to one of these workshops. So I have to have a bit of a chit chat with you both off air at some stage. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. Continued success with Imposter Talks. You're doing great work, great contribution to the community with it all. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. This was such a delight. You are such a natural, amazing host. So thank you for being vulnerable with us. I loved when you shared your stories too. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in today for another episode of Soul Sentred, the podcast. Gosh, did you get some light bulb moments then? Because I certainly did. And remember what I always say, if you hear something in any of our podcasts that you think somebody in your world might be interested in, you know exactly what to do. Share this podcast wherever you're listening to it or watching it on our Soul Sentred YouTube channel. And remember to subscribe, because when you subscribe, you never miss an episode. So in the meantime, wherever you are in this amazing, beautiful world of ours, I hope you're having an absolutely fabulous day or night. And I'm Jaynie Morris. This is Soul Sentred, the podcast.